Question for the gamers out there. What was the first game that you ever played? Did you enjoy it? Did you hate it? Did you just kinda like it? Was it something that was forced upon you? The reason I'm asking that is because as I've gotten older, I've started to question why I even got into certain games or gaming in general. And the answer is often so simple, but it's the most satisfying thing ever. I kind of just got into gaming because my older brother was playing games, and I seen my father that I didn't actually grow up with because he got locked up by the time I was like 3 years old, but that's a story for a different time. But I've been playing video games basically since I was like born, you could basically say, right? And my first game was Metal Gear Solid and Street Fighter, the first Mortal Kombat, Bloody Roar, King of Fighters, Tekken. I mean, like, just my background in gaming was like competitive fighters, and then here's this really interesting, intricate story with Solid Snake, and then eventually that grew with more of the MGS series, and I've always loved that tactical shooter type of style game with that stealth element implemented into it. And then it kind of grew into games like Kingdom Hearts, Dragon Quest, a lot of action RPG type of stuff, and then of course the anime games that was coming out at the time. I loved playing Pokemon games, things like that, where you was always doing more and kind of something for you to put a lot of time into as a child, right? But I think about, like, why did I enjoy those games? Because nowadays the new narrative for gaming is like, it has to be this big complex thing. It has to have these in it. Everything has a battle pass. Everything has one element. Oh, your next game has to be like leagues better than the other game. And it has me always thinking about, was gaming always that way, or is that just something that's been new in the last like 10 years or so, maybe last 15? I don't recall games back in the day kind of having this pressure that they had to uphold some kind of like legacy, uphold some kind of huge thing that they had to prove to the industry. It was just like, hey, we made this video game, we hope that you enjoy it. This is everything that was in the game. Granted, I know games back then actually had a lot of things that were polished, and if it wasn't, then it wasn't. There was no patches that was coming out back in the early 2000s. I'm 24. I was born in 2000, so I was playing games from the 90s in early 2000s, and then as things was coming out as well. But it was never a thing to just like, oh, I need to get the newest game. So I didn't really have that big of a back catalog, which kind of leads me into like my next question. Do you remember why you enjoy games? Like, you could get into your first game and not really enjoy it, but then you try something else and you might gear towards that style of gaming more. If you do have a game style that you enjoy more than the other, why? Like, why do you like shooters over action RPGs? Why do you like action RPGs over adventure RPGs? Why do you like tactical things versus this thing? Why do you like competitive over, like, what actually about gaming has gotten you roped into the narrative that you want to paint for what gaming is for you? That's probably a really bad way of phrasing it, but that's the only thing that can come off from my top of my head, because I don't script these videos, you know. I go off the top of my head. I kind of have some points that are written out that I want to dive into. So yeah, I'm never really the best at speaking the things that I want to speak all the time, but I just speak from my heart. So the reason I'm asking that is because I talk to so many people that feel like gaming has gone so far and there's like no hope for it. It's like, it's so bad, it's not fun, it's not attractive to them anymore, it's not something they want to spend time on as they've gotten older, or they're still young and they just feeling like everything is gray, like everything is a different variation of the same game. And it's kind of true, right? It's not that gaming is bad, because we have a lot of great games nowadays, but I do understand the narrative that a lot of video games kind of feel like copy paste clones of the previous game, even if they haven't had the same game in like its IP. Like, you could have a Call of Duty that might feel like an entirely different IP is what I'm saying. I know that's a weird analogy, but that's like that's the best analogy I can think of for saying that one game that has its own independent IP can still feel like an entirely other game. On one aspect, that's a really good thing, because if you're borrowing things from the other thing, then it can add to your own creativity. It can add to what your game, what your product actually brings to the table. But on the other spectrum, it could get a little stale because it feels like you're playing the same thing for years and years and years. As the next new game comes out, it's just like, okay, well, I've already played this before. The only thing that's different is it has a new coat of paint on it, or it has a different story, basically, right? It might have one mechanic that's changed up, or in some cases the mechanics actually feel worse because the previous game or whatever game that did it first just was a masterclass in how they did it. So everything else that's coming out is, you know, it's an imitation. It's imitation art. So it doesn't really feel like there's a lot of creativity being brought to the gaming space. However, for as much as there is those imitating games out there, there are tons of creator games out there. There are a bunch of games nowadays that it feels like you don't really know what to do with all of these games. As you get older, you get more access to money, and as you get more access to money, you start having more financial literacy, and you start to think, should I spend money on this? And you start kind of factoring in the cost per enjoyment, I guess you could say, because you'll say, I don't want to spend $60 here, but I could spend $20 on this thing, and it might be an indie project or indie game, and you're spending I don't know, the same amount of money you would getting like 2 AAA games or something. But you get more enjoyment out of those indie games when you bought like 4 or 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 of those games, and you're able to kind of finish those games in a few hours. So it might feel like a better enjoyment because you never end up finishing these games. You get a backlog. I know I'm kind of jumping from place to place, but I have a point with this, right? Don't overthink gaming. At the core, gaming is supposed to be something you enjoy. If you're going inside of the gaming space to be competitive, well, you clearly have an enjoyment in being competitive. It's not just all about the wins, right? And if you're going to the gaming space to experience an entirely new art form in the cinematic style stories, and those are the only types of games that truly interest you, then I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with just staying within your interests. I think we start becoming numb, and we start kind of feeling like gaming is missing something when we start diving a little too far from what actually got us into gaming to begin with. I've kind of had to fill that hole myself, so I also speak from experience where we haven't had another MGS game come out in a long time. We haven't had like an HD collection come out in years. We obviously just recently had them, and I would love to get them, but I have the original, so if I really want to play them again, I'll just play them again. But you know, sometimes you want a new story that are still kind of in that style, which is why I really enjoyed the Hitman games. Honestly, when Hitman 3 came out, you couldn't see me because I have like an emotional attachment to the Hitman games. I used to play those growing up too, the original Hitman games and some of the remake stuff as well. So when they released Hitman 3, the latest title for Hitman, it does kind of have similar elements to like MGS and that type of stealth mechanic. So I always love those types of games. You know, I talk about it when I'm playing the Spider-Man playthrough, or I'm talking about games like Batman. I just love how I just enjoy stealthy games. That's how I do. Splinter Cell games are great. We haven't really gotten a new one of those in a minute too. So, you know, my point is that I've grown up on like 3 kind of staples of gaming. I've enjoyed other styles of gaming, but I always go back to those ones that I enjoy. You know, there's a reason why I enjoy fighters. There's a reason why I enjoy some shooters or stealth games or things that implement all of the things. And I think that's why I still enjoy gaming, is because as much as I can see the other side of it getting stale and it's getting boring, and I get that, and sometimes I can also say games are getting way too expensive, but it's kind of long overdue. If you really think about it, video games have been pretty cheap considering that they've been a stagnant price for as much money that goes into them. And a lot of money goes into them, and video games don't really rise with inflation. So $60, $70 for a video game is not too crazy of an asking price, but I do get the perception, because you're like, it's a video game, right? But some video games take millions of dollars just like a movie would. So yeah, I never mean for these videos to get so long. I just like to talk and just pose these questions and just have these interactions with the audience or whoever watches me. And I just think I don't know, it's just real. Some of this might be cut up, some of it might not be cut up. Let's see, do I have another point that I wanted to kind of like bring out? Like I said, just make sure you're going back to the original stuff that you love gaming for, and you're gonna find that there are new games that are in those styles, in those genres, that are constantly coming up, that are going to be able to reignite that flame for you. It's gonna be able to just bring you back into why you love the gaming space. The only other note that I have here is make sure you're playing the games that you want. Don't feel like you have to play every new hot game. Like, just because this new game came out doesn't mean you have to play it. Some of the enjoyment that you had as a child was because your information was so limited. The internet was not all just like right there. Of course, I'm speaking for people that are at least as old as me, if not older. And that's where gaming felt a little bit more. You had to scour around to find that extra information. You had to go inside of Game Informers. You might find a gaming magazine here or there. You had these kind of centralized gaming hubs where you could go to you could go to like a bar, or you could go to an arcade area, or you could go to the center. Like there's not a lot of those going on anymore, so it can feel like it's a lot more disconnected, and you have to reach out a little bit more to maybe find the connection with other people that are interested in the things you're into, if you're the type of person that likes to have that kind of connection and feedback with a lot of other people that are interested in the same things that you're interested in. So yeah, it's like the way that you perceive the games have changed, but gaming in itself hasn't necessarily changed from what you enjoyed about it. I guess you just have to do a little bit more looking for it, especially with the ease of access that we have to the internet. All it takes is just a quick internet search to, are there games like this, and you'll start to find some of those things. So I hope this kind of is something that can get you to go back in and rekindle your love for gaming, rekindle your love for this art form, and find games that might be similar to the things that you played when you was a child, or even a few years ago, where you're looking for that fulfillment again. So just look somewhere. Just how do a game similar to Final Fantasy, and Google is gonna pull up a whole list of them, and then just look at some trailers. The beauty of the internet is you have people out here that play video games that should be unbiased, of course, play games, and you can see them before you spend your money on it and stuff. Like myself, I kind of mix in this content as well as my actual gaming content. Just don't forget why you fell in love with this, because it's a beautiful thing for you to have been missing out on something just because you don't have the money for it, which that is something that's very understandable, or you don't have the time for it. I get it. When we were children, we always had way more time than what we knew what to do with, but you can still find that time somewhere. It's just you have to manage it differently now, even if you have an hour or two here or there. I think that's like the power of handheld gaming as well. A lot of people nowadays on a lot of surveys will say that they're doing a way more mobile gaming. I just think it's because the ease of access. You have a phone, right? So they're pretty content with some of those titles that you have on your mobile device. But when you look at sales like Nintendo was doing with the Game Boy, Game Boy Color, Game Boy SP, Game Boy Advance, they were killing it. They were crushing it, right? Those were some of the most successful, if not the most successful handheld devices ever. The original PSP, I don't really know too much about the PS Vita. I didn't have one. I know my homie Dom had one. You've seen him on the channel a few times. Handheld games kind of fit the mold into a lot of people's childhood video games as well, just as much as console games did. Just as much as a staple as Halo is, you had the staple of all these mobile, well, I wouldn't say mobile, but all these handheld device games that just blew everything out of the water. So you can find similar enjoyment in a lot of PC games that are like that, and they're bringing a whole bunch of them into the console space and things of that nature. One game that I'm about to jump into is Celeste. It looks beautiful. I love the art style, and it just reminds me so much of the games that I used to play growing up. So yeah, if you're feeling like something is missing from gaming again, I encourage you to take a step back, ask yourself, what was your first game? Why do you love gaming? And have you dived too far away from that? And if you have, you need to go back and rekindle it by either replaying some of those older games or just doing a quick Google search and seeing if you could find games that are similar to that. Yeah, this is probably way longer than I wanted it to be, but hopefully you enjoyed whatever music I play in the background. And yeah, let me know what your thoughts are on the gaming industry as a whole, where it's at right now. I appreciate you. If you enjoyed the vibes, make sure you like and subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.